Are you sitting comfortably? Then we'll begin.
'Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. There's still time. The AFTN Soccer Show, broadcasting on CITR Radio 101.9 FM from the unceded Musqueam territory of the University of beautiful and still chilly British Columbia. I'm Michael McCall.
And I'm Zachary Adam Eisenheimer.
And we've got another busy show for you this episode. Not as jam-packed as some of our usual ones. I'll just call it busy instead, because it's not the full 3 hours. It's just a little bit over 2. So these short ones, as I call them, in inverted commas, are kind of what we're putting out just to cover all the news and cover all the different angles and stuff as well. Also meant to mention in the last show as well, I finally have got round to getting the podcast and some of the other things that we haven't been on, because Google Podcasts obviously died and it's now YouTube Podcast, YouTube Music. So all the episodes are now uploaded on to YouTube. They are blocked in Russia and Belarus. Every single episode that went up, all 652 of them, I got a message through on my email telling me that it was blocked in 2 territories, which is Russia and Belarus.
Why would that be? Is there anything?
I just guess YouTube's not available there.
Oh.
Is my guess. Obviously, because we play music, this is one of the reasons I hadn't uploaded it. So unless we become a monetized channel, there's no issue. I still hope we do become a monetized channel. We just need under 300 subscribers still to get there. But they're all up on YouTube if you want to listen to it on YouTube Music. They had been up on an app called Podchaser that I hadn't heard of, but it was flagged up to me that we'd kind of disappeared off that. So I've got us back onto that, and then it's on all the other usual places. It's on Spotify, Apple, Podbean, all your podcast app. It should be up there. If there's anything that you use and it's not up on there, get in touch. AFTN Canada on Twitter, AFTN Canada at hotmail.com, AFTN on Blue Sky, and we'll work around that. So that's the housekeeping out of the way. And I'll be honest, it's not quite the episode I hope to release for this one. We've got a few chats in the work, but they've kind of been held up for a few days or so. So we'll be bringing you those over the next couple of episodes instead. But we've still got a lot to talk about. We're going to be talking Whitecaps and first impressions of new head coach Jesper Sorensen. We're going to be looking at the MLS roster rules and regulation changes that were announced last week. Get the thoughts from Whitecaps CEO Axel Schuster on that. And then we'll turn our attention to the Canadian Premier League after what's been a very busy and at times dramatic last few days across the league, especially in the Lower Mainland, as Vancouver FC's squad just seems to be getting less and less instead of increasing. And there's some old faces returning to the league and some well-known faces that look like their time in the league is done. So we'll get into all of that. Most important thing, though, to ask you, Zach, straight off the bat, have you seen my beaver video?
No, you keep going on about this.
Yes.
On and on and on. No, I have not seen your beaver video, Michael.
I saw, for the first time, a wild beaver.
Oh, where were you?
I don't want to say in case people go to the park and like frighten it and stuff. I'm a bit confused because there's no rivers or anything that lead into the park. It was just in a pond. So I'm not
Oh,
quite sure how it
you
got
made the video
there.
yourself.
Aha, yeah.
Oh, did you send it to me? No, you sent me
No, I
some.
put it up on social media. But
Right, right.
there's been a lot of people comment on it, and they're all saying, poor Zach will be getting all the beaver jokes on the show.
Uh,
But like in all seriousness, I was so excited. I've never seen a beaver in the wild, genuinely excited by it, and I stood watching it for ages, just eating away, and it was in an icy pond, and it was tremendous.
I'll have to check that video out.
You ever seen an icy beaver?
I can't remember any encounters with the that great Canadian, what is it, large rodent?
Yeah,
Except for
the second largest rodent in the world.
at the zoo. I've seen the Toronto Zoo
Yeah.
has a really cool beaver dam, beaver lodge setup where they have a camera inside the dwelling, so you see it come in and sleep and go out and eat and whatever. Yeah.
Okay, enough of the beaver chat. How has your week been, Zach?
Yeah, it was a good week. Typically in January we do a cereal night, so even though I'm
Oh,
not,
what did you have? Like Cocoa Pops, Sugar Puffs, Cheerios.
yeah, all of those were definitely options. I didn't have any because I'm not eating the carbs right now, so it was boring for me. But yeah, I mean the best you can get is Captain Crunch.
Never had it.
You've never had Captain Crunch?
Never had Captain
Now,
Crunch.
I will say, even though they've worked to manage this or make it less painful, it can be difficult on the roof of your mouth because it is kind of crispy and firm and whatever. But
Yeah, with my teeth, that sounds like a disaster.
yeah, well, maybe just yeah, try a small amount sometime. It's delicious. It's very sugary and
Crunchy nut cornflakes were my favorite. You can't get them here. You used to be able to get them in the States, but they've stocked them in the States as well. And you get some kind of variations of it, but it's not quite Kellogg's crunchy
mm.
nut cornflakes. I mean, that's disappointing. Did you get out to any football this week?
No football this week.
I got out on Saturday to my first VMSL game of the year. So I've taken in my first game of the year. Only, I think, my second VMSL game of the season. Wasn't a classic. It was a 1-0 draw, hard-fought game, bitterly cold, but it's just nice to get out to live football.
Yeah, I was hoping to get to the U19 game today. Was a 2-all draw. I believe Scott was there and passing on messages, but that did not work out. So I'm hoping I can't make it to the next one, but I think February 9th is the first one I'm hopefully going to be able to make it to.
Ah, and of course, I have been very busy this weekend because on Saturday, the Vancouver 2025 Hot Chocolate Festival kicked off. That can only mean one thing, Zach. It's the return of Hot Chocolate Boy.
Hot chocolate boy, he's never had one. Hot chocolate bad one. Hot chocolate boy.
Like the sighting of the first swallows in the sky, or the daffodil, crocuses, or snowdrops poking through the hard ground. Another magical moment from early in the year is the start of the Vancouver Hot Chocolate Festival and the return of Hot Chocolate Boy. And I've been a busy lad over the weekend as the festival got underway on Saturday, January 18th. Went to a couple of places over the first 2 days. I'll bring you a little bit of a quick review from them both just now. I was going to have my wife on it with me, but when we were kind of talking about it, we were just really in full agreement. So there didn't really seem a lot of point in this, both saying the same thing. So yeah, got out to 2 different places across the city this past weekend at the Hot Chocolate Festival, the 15th annual Hot Chocolate Festival. We kicked things off on Saturday night at Melt Confectionery, a fantastic chocolatier in the Riley Park area of Vancouver on Main Street, 4895 Main Street to be exact. And they've got 4 different drink flavours that will be across the board over the duration of the festival. The one that we tried is number 121 in the festival guide, the Biscoff Cookie Butter Hot Chocolate. It's available for the full festival from January 18th to February 14th. It's milk hot chocolate made with Biscoff cookies ground into a fine and smooth butter. It gives it a really rich, toasty flavour, and then they blend that with a speculoos spice mixture, add in the milk, and they describe it as very cosy, very comforting, and a sweet little treat. It is absolutely fantastic, so delicious, not too sweet, not too sickly, and it is paired with something that, although this was the first thing I've had from this year's festival, I really think it's going to be hard to beat this. It was Melt Chocolate's Espresso Ganache Tart, and the coffee taste from that tart was absolutely amazing. It's got some cream on it as well. It's just lovely buttery pastry. You wanted more. If it was a bigger tart, and it is quite a small one, it's maybe the size of a toonie, maybe a little bit bigger. I think it was maybe just the size of a toonie. And like when you're eating it, you're like, oh, I could have so much more of that. But it's so rich that I think if you did have more, you'd maybe feel a little bit sick after it. And it's just a perfect combination. The espresso ganache, the Biscoff cookie with the hot chocolate, they go together absolutely fantastically. $14 it costs for that. Highly recommend it. Melt Chocolatier, as I mentioned, based in Main Street. They're closed on Tuesdays. They're open from 1 to 8. It's a small cafe. There's really only room to sit 4. Now, we went on Saturday about 7 o'clock at night because we thought things are going to have quietened down. And like speaking to the lady behind the counter, she said it had been a crazy first day. So we got in at the perfect time and really recommend that you get out to there. Recommend Melt Chocolatiers just anyway, like Melt Confectionery do some fantastic chocolates, absolutely delicious. They're a little bit pricey, yes, you get what you pay for. We were going to get their advent calendar this year. We didn't, and I really regret it now after having this hot chocolate. It's also served with a little kind of chocolate button as well that is absolutely delicious. So that was our first one, and it's going to be a very hard one to beat. I think we started on a high, and our second one was also a very good one as well. So it's a very high bar that we have set early. On Sunday, we headed out to one of our favourite bakeries that is nearby us, the Vegan To Live For Bakery and Cafe. I'm sure you've heard of To Live For, or you've seen their products in coffee shops around the city, run by Erin Ireland. Their showcase cafe is based at 1508 Nanaimo Street in East Vancouver, open 7 to 5 daily. They're going to have 2 different offerings for the Hot Chocolate Festival. The second one comes February the 1st to the 14th. Cinnamon bun and cream cheese in a cup. We will definitely be going back for that because it features some cinnamon monkey bread. But for this one that they have from January 18th to the 31st, it's number 159 in the festival catalogue. It's To Live For's Hot Buttered Rum meets Stroopwafel hot chocolate. A decadent, very flavourful, hot buttered rum hot chocolate made by cooking butter, rum extract and sugar together, making a syrup and then pairing it with a not too sweet chocolate sauce. And they serve it with a traditional caramel stroopwafel, very chewy. The steam from the hot chocolate, dipping it in the hot chocolate, it melts it to perfection. Now, I should mention To Live For is a dairy-free and vegan bakery. We go there a lot. Genuinely, you could not tell their sweet treats are vegan. And I made the move to kind of oat milk a few years ago. I still have like normal cow milk as well, but in my morning coffees or if I'm out, I try and get oat milk as much as possible. That was more really just because of some rosacea issues that I was having on my face, but have really got to like the taste of oat milk. And this is a delicious one. You would not know that it was an oat milk hot chocolate. You would not know that it was a vegan caramel stroopwafel either. $11.25. In the grand scheme of Hot Chocolate Festival offerings, that's a pretty good price. And to live for, their stuff can be a little bit on the pricey side as well. They do amazing croissants and filled croissant cubes. So I always would recommend getting out to there in general. But this hot buttered rum, hot chocolate, fantastic. And it's been a great start to the festival. 2 tremendous offerings. And like I said, the bar has been set high. And we'll see what the week ahead brings for Hot Chocolate Boy.
Every girl yelling, wanting him to be the terror. Hot chocolate boy, he's a sensation. Hot chocolate nation, hot chocolate boy.
The wonderful signs of beat happening. Hot Chocolate Boy, you're going to have that song in your head all month long. I most certainly have. And my teeth already feeling the effects of 2 hot chocolates in the first 2 days of the festival. Can I manage one a day? No. Can I afford one a day? Definitely not. And I know, Zach, you got out last year to Peaked Pies. No, the Pie Hole. It was the Pie Hole you got out to in Langley. I looked at theirs this year, and one of the ones that they've got is a cherry one, and I'm like, there's not a lot of flavours that I detest, but cherry is one of them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I do not like cherry.
Why is that?
I don't know. It's like cherry, marzipan. Those 2 flavours are just my no-nos.
Huh. I'm just calling it up here. Speaking of the cherry, so this is taken right from their social media, but Gail and Brendan.
Yes, I saw.
Right. So they went to day 1, Vancouver Hot Chocolate Festival. They went to the Pie Hole in Langley. Great place. It looks like they had a Yabba Dabba Delicious for Gail. Belgium white chocolate infused with cherry and lime. That's the one
that was the cherry one. See, I love lime, but the cherry aspect rules me out.
I much prefer lime over cherry. And then a salted honey cornflake hot chocolate for Brendan. Both yum.
Yeah, honey as
Brendan,
well. I'm not a big honey fan.
And then Brendan brought home some pies for dinner.
Yeah. I want to give a shout out as well to Hallie on Blue Sky, who was chatting with Hallie last year on Twitter about the Hot Chocolate Festival. He's on Blue Sky now. He shared his spreadsheet with me.
Oh, right.
We've got a spreadsheet as well, which Caitlin put together. And as usual, I haven't got around to looking at it yet. I just picked a couple of places that were close at hand for our first 2 visits. But yeah, it's very expensive. And if you've got a sweet tooth, it's like the dream time of year. But I'm going to try and not go overboard this year. I said to Caitlin, just 4 or 5 a week.
If it's very expensive, is this not the time in the show we should plug the subscription?
Yeah, this is what all your extra podcast money goes to, $30 a year, $3 a month. Also, I should shout out as well, because we did it last year, and then we didn't do it for the second half of the year. If anyone wants to sponsor the podcast...
Oh, right.
Obviously, we got Recovery Family Law that sponsored us for the first half of last year, and very grateful to Darnell for that sponsorship. But I'll throw that out again for this year. If anyone wants to sponsor the podcast, please do get in touch, AFTN Canada at hotmail.com, and we will talk. If you want to sponsor us for a show, a month, 6 months, or the year, get in touch. We've got very attractive rates. And of course, everyone wants to be part of soccer as the World Cup approaches in 2026. Who doesn't want to be a part of that? We'll get into the football chat now. I guess folk don't want to sponsor a Hot Chocolate Festival podcast, so maybe they do. I don't know. But in this part, we're going to talk MLS. And MLS announced on Tuesday some interesting roster regulations and rule changes that not totally out there, so a lot of folk may have kind of missed this along the way. So I'll run through what the changes are. Then I got a chance to speak to Axel about it on Tuesday after the Jesper Sorensen press conference, and then Zach and me will unpack a little bit of what those changes are and what they might mean to the Whitecaps, what they might mean to the league and other leagues. So Tuesday saw MLS release some details about the roster rules and regulations for the 2025 season. Some of the stuff in it has been murmured for a long time and it was finally confirmed. Some of the stuff was just like tweaking here and there or improvements here and there as well. We'll get into all of the changes in this part because I don't really think it's been that well publicised, some of the stuff either. I think it's just got lost in all the more sexy stuff of new signings, transfers, new coaching appointments, everything like that. So I guess the big headline piece from it is that MLS finally is moving in part to an intra-league cash transfer system, along with all the current mechanisms. So MLS clubs may now invest an unlimited amount of out-of-pocket funds, i.e. cash, to acquire players via trade from within the league. This new initiative allows top players to get a move, get a pay increase, but remain within Major League Soccer. And the league is hoping that it's going to incentivize player development and create more pathways. Not so sure on those aspects of it. We'll come to that. But basically, clubs can now use cash to trade for players with other MLS teams. So the Whitecaps can acquire a player from within the league from any club without having to use general allocation money, super draft selections, international roster spots, all those kind of things. The Whitecaps could get in touch with Toronto and say, okay, we want to buy Insigne off you. We're going to give you this in cash, yes or no. You know, as football works everywhere else in the world. I mean, there's good and bad things to that. We'll come to that in a sec. But clubs will be allowed to acquire up to 2 players and trade away up to 2 players per year for cash. Now, similar to transfer fees, clubs can convert the revenue generated from these sales to GAM, and cash spent to acquire a player via a cash trade will also be applied to the player's salary budget charge for 2025. So to basically summarise that, it's to stop clubs like Miami, LAFC, just going out buying all these top players, adding them to the roster, having an inflated, salary-heavy roster. It's still, salary-wise for the whole team, has to fall within the whole salary cap for their entire roster. So they can't just splash all the cash on all these players. They still have to meet all the other criteria, designated players, under 22 initiatives, all that kind of stuff as well. Clubs that acquire a player via a cash trade can not offer any other compensation as part of the trade. It's cash only. If a club acquires a player via a cash trade, that player then has to occupy a designated player spot or an under 22 initiative player slot with the new club. That player must also remain as a designated player or under 22 initiative player on his new club's roster for the remaining guaranteed term of his contract. Now we'll get into some of the good and the bad points of that in a sec with Zach. I'll just go through some of the other roster rules and tweaks though that were announced in the same release on Tuesday. Clubs can now have a second guaranteed contract buyout, including that of a designated player each year, and it's at the club's expense. So before, clubs could buy out 1 player per season. Whitecaps did it last year with Louis Martins. It's not something that they've done very often, but this now gives clubs flexibility to get out of a deal, especially maybe a high-value deal if it's not working out with the player. So the buyouts can be conducted at any part of the year, in season, off season. If it's done during the season though, it has to be done by the close of the secondary transfer window. And talking of the transfer windows, they were also confirmed in the release. The primary transfer window will run from Friday, January 31st to Wednesday, April 23rd, with the secondary transfer window running from Thursday, July 24th to Thursday, August 21st. And unlike last year, thankfully, the transfer windows for the Canadian teams are the same as for the American teams. So the 3 Canadian MLS teams and all the Canadian Premier League teams will have that secondary transfer window that runs from July 24th to the 21st. No 1 week earlier this time. That kind of screwed the Whitecaps over a little bit. But the last thing, just to go over this before we kind of break it down, chat about it a bit more in terms of roster rules and regulation tweaks, and it's one that I'm a big fan of, which is off-roster homegrown changes. So MLS has altered certain parameters for off-roster homegrown players to provide more opportunities for younger players in league matches and cup competitions. And this is long overdue. It's something we've talked about on the podcast for a couple of years now that we'd want to see changed, and now it has. Previously, players could get called up 4 times from academy, from the second team, such as WFC2, and they could play in 2 matches. So that is now changing, in that off-roster homegrown players are now eligible to appear in up to 6 MLS league matches, along with unlimited first-team appearances in cup competitions, such as the Canadian Championship, the US Open Cup, Leagues Cup, CONCACAF Champions Cup, any friendlies that the club plays. Players have to be 21 years or younger, though, during the calendar year to be classed as an off-roster homegrown player. Now, it didn't say anything, though, in the rules and regulation communication that came out about over 21-year-old players, so I just have to assume that that is the same with the 4 short-term agreements and they can play in 2 games. But I mean, it's long overdue. It's something that will reward players that are showing well, homegrown players at various levels, whether academy or MLS Next Pro. So a lot, obviously, to unpack there. We'll get into all of that shortly. But before Zach and me do, let's get some thoughts from Whitecaps CEO and sporting director Axel Schuster. Caught up with him on Tuesday before he headed off to Spain, just to chat a little bit about a couple of these roster regulation changes. Here's what he had to tell me. So, Axel, the MLS announced on Tuesday that there's some roster changes for this year. And one of the things that's been rumoured for a while is this out-of-pocket payment and trades within the league to make it more like football around the world. Is that a good thing for a club like the Whitecaps, especially when it's up for sale? Are the owners likely to put their hands in the pockets for trades like this or signings like this?
Yeah, so first of all, it's a good thing. I think it's needed for this league to grow, to have an internal transfer market, a real internal transfer market. It made no sense for me that you had to transfer a very good player out and you had to buy somebody outside of the league instead of doing a transaction within the league if there was the right profile within the league. So said that if somebody identifies a need and there is a player in this league where you think he would help you and the club is up to sell this player, then it should be possible no matter what. But I have also to say one thing, it's only changing the mechanism that you can use every existing mechanism also in the league.
Yes.
So that doesn't mean that now owners can just grab into their pocket and put money into the team, because you still need the roster spots, and you need the roster spots with discretionary spend. As everyone knows, we have 3 DPs, and we have 2 U22 players, so it's not right now. It's not something that is an option for us unless we sell a player. So might there be more interest in our players? Yes, within the league, because I think that we are a club that has identified good players and have helped them to grow within this league. But I can promise everyone our idea next year is to be stronger, to be better, and not to do the opposite. So I would say I don't think that we have the possibility to use the mechanism right now. Because we are not planning to sell a lot of players, and unless that doesn't happen for this transfer window, it's not an option for us.
I like it. I think it's what's been needed in the league as well. But is there a danger that you might have clubs like Miami or LA that they come in with such offers that other clubs just basically can't say no to it, and then they just get stronger and stronger?
Look, it's this general question that I get asked very often since I arrived here, why you want to sell players, and in MLS the owners shouldn't do this. I think the easy answer to that is every club in this world is a selling club, unless you are working for Real Madrid, Manchester City, or Bayern Munich. And so I think it's not a question if there's one club in the league who can do this. It's a question if your player is that attractive and good that he receives those offers. And the one difference now is that if a player is that good and that he is on the radar to getting sold to a club outside of the league, he can also choose to stay in the league if there's a club to making this offer. And I think this is a good thing for the league, that players have not to walk away if they have progressed in a way that somebody is up to spend this amount of money for them. But again, it's nothing we want to do, but it's also keeping the money in the ecosystem. If you sell a player for this amount of money, you can also spend this amount of money. Also, this has changed. So in future, you can keep more of the money from a sale as GEM. You can also keep more of money you generate in the sale as GEM. I think the one thing I would like to add here is the most important thing of all of this is that we create a cycle of spending and receiving. Because the thing that is often seen as a bad thing is selling players, because you lose quality. All the implementations should help that you, if you sell a player, can use this also to strengthen your squad again. And that's actually something that was quite difficult before with the rules before. And I think this is the biggest invention. People should look at it from this side. A lot of clubs have sold players for a lot of money, and after that have spent the money in an intelligent way to make the team better. And I think all of this is possible now with the new changes in the rules.
Last thing about the changes today, the other big one is the homegrown off-roster spots as well, which I love for competitions like Canadian Championship, especially. There's a chance it could be Whitecaps TSS. There's a chance that by the second leg of that tie's like out of control. So this gives you the chance to see these young guys in that kind of situation, also blood these homegrowns as well. That must also be a good selling point for the team to these young guys. Look, stay in our system. Don't look at CPL. You'll get these opportunities now.
No, absolutely. I was somebody who has spoken several times with the league about this. I said, look, we don't want to get around CBA rules. We don't want to create a second roster in our second team. We only want to find a way how we can give more chances to young players. I think this is needed. This is important. If we want to grow as a league, we also, other than changing the rules of transfers in and out and how you can spend money, you also have to find ways, intelligent ways, how you can help your young domestic players to grow and to develop, because our league will only become better if we also increase the quality of our domestic player pool. And for that reason, this was very important. And I'm very happy that the league found an agreement also with the union and with all stakeholders. They have evolved to be more flexible on this. And we definitely will use this year. And it's also part of how we build our roster. People always ask us about depth, and we want to add more depth. But we think we also have good depth in homegrown players. But in the past, we were not able to really rely on that because we couldn't use them in the way we wanted to use them, and now we can use them more often. And so now, actually, that will also help us to have more depth for our first team.
Thank you. Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Axel Schuster there. Some of his thoughts on a couple of the MLS roster changes around the cash trades and the new off-roster homegrown rules. So we'll get into a little bit of that now with you, Zach. It's interesting. It's something I think the league has needed to improve. Cash trades, commonplace around the world. For a team like the Whitecaps, though, it may not be a good thing. For a team like the Whitecaps that's up for sale, and the owners might not want to dig in their pockets any more than they need to in 2025. I don't foresee the Whitecaps being a team this year that's going to be taking part in these cash trades. Could they be a team that takes part on the opposite side of it and that they lose a couple of players? Hard to say, because the players that obviously get bought have to be a designated player or under 22 initiative player on the new team. But a club like, say, Miami or LAFC, put it to Axel there, if they come in to the owners and make an offer they can't refuse and say Ryan Gauld, Andres Kubis, it's hard for owners to turn that down. And that is the worry for teams like the Whitecaps. But like across the league, I think this is a great thing. But I do think you might get a little bit of a split between the haves and the have-nots that just increases a little bit more.
Well, yeah, absolutely. You're not wrong there. It definitely has the possibility to do that. This definitely feels like something pushed for by certain teams. Though I think you're right, and you've said this before, that this is something that could have helped Vancouver in the past. But the question marks you raised over will it be meaningful this season based on the current climate and very specific situation? It feels like less likely to, but I wouldn't put it past Axel to be able to pull something off. I'm not saying he will, but I wouldn't put it past him. Can we go on a bit of a tangent?
We usually do.
Because this ties into something that's very weighing heavy on my mind these days. And I think maybe you retweeted it. I can't remember, but I saw an X posting by Glass City that the Whitecaps are or could be in a position. Actually, this is based on reporting from Manu Veth, that they could be collecting some more money from the Alphonso Davies transfer, even if he extends at Bayern.
Yes, there's still like 6 mechanisms or something that could still get triggered.
Yeah, I didn't see all the details. I haven't read Manu's article or
no,
whatever.
I only saw some bullet points off it, and I was like, oh.
Yeah, because basically it said, look, it was for 10, it could go up to 14, but it could ultimately rise to 20. So it sounds like the Whitecaps were maybe more adept in that transaction than appears. I mean, you're dealing with an opaque mechanism and situation, but on the outside, it seemed like, okay, they got money, they got a sell-on clause, but it seems like some of these bonuses are even better than most people thought. And for me, I'm surprised that some of them will activate based on him renewing or staying there longer. Or
yeah, because you just assume it's going to be, if they get sold on or moved to another club. Yeah. You don't think, there's something in place for staying, thriving, maybe being a career player at Bayern.
So the reason why I mentioned that is not just to talk about Bayern Munich, which I love to do, but is because if that is the case, if Alphonso Davies in the month of January or shortly thereafter or whatever the time frame is going to be, if he does sign a 4 or 5 year contract extension at Bayern Munich, or if he signs somewhere else, I wonder how that will impact the Whitecaps. Because I do also wonder, and maybe off the top of your head, but I can't remember now, like how much of that money is tied into spending on the club, how much is available in GAM to them, and all those kinds of things. Especially in a deal that obviously was made so many years ago and has these add-ons or potential add-ons or potential achievement-based markers or whatever. How much of that money it goes to it has to be used in certain ways, how much it goes to the league, how much is it just goes in Kerfoot's pocket, right? Because I mean, there was at this time in Whitecaps fandom where that was one of the favorite things people were asking about, both the knowledgeable and those who didn't know, right? They were like, what is being done with the Alphonso Davies transfer money? And then those who follow closely were like, okay, there's about the 5 players they invested in or whatever it was. Maybe it was 4. I can't remember. Like,
Yeah, I know.
Bom Wang and others.
It's like it's not a never-ending pot of gold
No.
that folks seem to think
and then,
it is.
Well, yeah, it did get into this awkward stage where like 5 years later, people were like, what happened to the Davies money? It's like, well, you haven't been paying attention because you can see where they spent it. Now you could say, okay, in Bom Huang they bought and then they sold them for basically the same amount. So what's been done with that? That's a different question. But now we're entering a potential phase here where that could be another question, for Axel, which this was never really a question for Axel. What is possible with this new incoming money?
Yeah,
because I think that
I think it does have to get put into GAM. Like, even with these cash trades, the money that the clubs are getting gets converted to GAM.
Yeah, okay.
And it's, I mean, obviously it'd be great just to get rid of that mechanism altogether.
Right. But they're not quite there yet.
No.
But I think I bring that up because to me, it's if you're talking about the possibility of strengthening your squad and there's this new mechanism, new opportunity to do that, maybe money from the added on value of the Alphonso Davies transfer is maybe part of that gets put into this and is actually money that Axel could use to bring in a player from around the league that they highly value and want to see in one of those 2 roles that you mentioned, a DP or a U21 or whatever.
The unfortunate thing was me talking to Axel about it. I literally read it during the Sorensen press conference.
Right.
And then it was like, okay, it's finished. I need to speak to Axel about this without really having fully to digest it and stuff. But that's very valid questions. Obviously, he won't say much until, I guess, the end of January till we know exactly what's maybe happening with Fonzie, if we even do by the end of January.
Yeah, it's on that. It is like this crazy seesaw where it's just like, a year ago, you would have been like, yeah, the dude's going to Madrid, right?
And then Liverpool appeared in the scene, and
there's all the
it's been linked, and
all these other teams. But now it's like the dude's engaged. There's reports that he wants to, Musiala's getting extended. They're good buddies. He wants to hang out with them. There's all these things where I won't believe any of them until the ink is dry on whatever paper it is, and then go forward from there. But yeah, it's just been a crazy.
It's a saga that just needs to end, though.
Yeah. I would enjoy that.
Yeah. Going back to these cash trades, I don't know how much we'll see, especially in year 1. But there's going to certainly be players that are in demand. And I mean, we've seen blockbuster bumper deals. Like even just last week, we're talking about the Chicho Arango from RSL to San Jose. It's maybe not a huge headline thing to a lot of people, but for folk that follow the league or clubs at our level, it's like, oh, this is like massive.
It's a very, very significant deal. Yeah.
Yeah. There's going to be one of these cash trades this year that is just like, everyone's going to be like, whoa, that club set out a statement. And there's clubs with money in this league. And well, I guess we'll see if that does create a little bit of imbalance. What you don't want is what I've spoken about before. It happens in Scotland, Celtic and Rangers. If there's any team, Aberdeen, Hearts, Hibs, that have decent players and they're kind of challenging or any threat at all to the top 2, they just buy those players, they weaken the opponents, and then, they're fine. And you don't want to see the top teams doing that.
Michael, why are you jumping ahead to our CPL chat about Forge already?
They're losing players.
Yeah, but they're also plucking all the
from
other clubs at the same time.
That is very true. Talking about haves and have-nots, you've got some clubs in the CPL that's almost got full rosters, and some you're like, oh, they're playing a 5-a-side league this year.
Yeah, they have 12, and 3 of them won't be playing.
Yes. The other thing with the cash trades, it could be opened up down the line. I do like that they're tying it in with the whole salary cap still, because that will have an element of control over it. And I guess we'll just have to see how it plays out. And I know owners have been pushing for 4 DPs and stuff like that as well. So that might come.
Not Greg Kerfoot, notably.
No. Maybe the new owners for their new team. That's another little thing that we won't go into. It was funny at the Sorensen press conference. There was people there I've never seen before. And there's some news media folk there. So they got some questions at the end. And their questions is, we don't care about the new coach. We just want to know what's happening with the sale. And there wasn't really much to say in that.
No.
It's a good discussion there about the cash trade element in the changes to the rules and regulations. There was more to unpack as well. And we'll look at the off-roster homegrown changes and a few of the other things that came out from MLS HQ after we hear the first song this episode from our album of the month.
Hi, I'm Stuart Armstrong, and you're listening to the AFTN Soccer Show.
You are not an open book, I can't do nothing about that. But I'm worried, I'm overdrawn, what am I doing up at the witching hour? Pick up a book, put down a book, turn on the TV. It's 2 a.m, there's nothing on, I just need something to focus on. To slide out of control. I hope that you come back. I can't eat, can't sleep. When I close my eyes, the thought of you denies me the rest and repair that I need.
Welcome back to the AFTN Soccer Show on CITR Radio 101.9 FM. And kicking off this part is the first of 2 songs this episode from our album of the month, the 2005 album from English band The Rakes, their debut album Capture Release. And that was one of the album tracks from it, track 4, Open Book. And we'll have a second one coming up later in the show because in all my excitement to get the Julie Cruz song on the last episode that came out on Saturday, I forgot to include one of the Rake songs in that because that was originally meant to be a 4-parter and it became a 3, and the part that was going to have the Rakes in it got cut and held back to this episode. So we'll play you 2 from the album instead this episode. I know most of you listening to this don't care, but I do. So, yep, we'll have 2 songs from the Rakes. Okay, back to the football chat now and back looking at the changes to the MLS rules and regulations that came out last week. We looked at the cash trade aspect in part 1. We're going to kick things off in this part by looking at something that's hopefully going to have a big impact for the Whitecaps, should certainly have a big impact for MLS teams that invest in their academy, invest in their youth. Could also, depending on how this plays out, have a big impact on CPL and USL teams as well. And that is the changes to the off-roster homegrown rules and status involving when, where and how often you can call up under 21 homegrown players.
Yeah.
And as outlined earlier, if you're 21 and under and a homegrown player, you can now appear in up to 6 games.
Massive improvement.
In MLS and unlimited in cup competitions and friendlies.
Because before it was those 4 call-ups and you could appear in 2 games or whatever.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
That could be huge for a number of teams. Teams that really invest in their academy, your Dallases and Red Bulls and like all these teams that really are bringing guys on. Now, the Whitecaps have struggled in bringing guys through the academy, the whole MLS era. But recently in particular, up until maybe last year, there wasn't a lot of homegrown guys that's made the jump. Now we've seen Jeevan Badwal signed. Nicolas Florio Chateau isn't a homegrown, obviously he's a draft pick. But you've got Liam McKenzie that's highly thought of in WFC2 that could make the jump. Mikhail Gerasimennikov, he's another guy that they're looking at. There's a lot of guys. I was out at U16, U18 training recently, and there's guys in that U16 team that are very highly thought of. Some of them are playing at international level. There's a Nigerian under-17 international on that team. Within 2 years, if those guys continue their development, there's folk at the Whitecaps very excited about some of the talent that they're producing. Some of the U19 talent that were in League One last year, some have gone to college, some have been let go, but the ones they really like are making the jump to MLS Next Pro and Whitecaps 2 because the U19s are no more. With the new MLS Next rules, it's U18 and U16. So those U19 guys have gone to WFC 2. So there's a lot of talent in this Whitecap system, and this will now give them the opportunity to get those extra minutes. What I've always loved about... I can only speak about the UK system. I'm guessing it's the same around the world. But if you're a club in England or Scotland and you've got a youth player that's done really well, even at East Fife we do this with our U20 guys, you reward them by having them on the bench for a first team game. And if you're in a fortunate position where you're a couple of goals up and it's 5-10 minutes to go, you throw the young lad on, you blood him, you give him his debut. And that's not been that easy to do in MLS. This will let clubs do that. This will let the Whitecaps do that. And it's a short measuring window. Yes, you can't glean too much. But I do wonder, with so many options on the table for these guys, do you sign MLS Next Pro? Do you go to college? Do you go into the CPL, Grady McDonald? Maybe we'll talk about Grady in part 3 and get that move on to Europe after getting maybe more minutes in a CPL environment as opposed to maybe getting regular starts in MLS Next Pro, but the eyes aren't on that as much. So I'll waffled on a bit there, Zach, but there's a lot to this that I like, and there's a lot of big decisions for some of these players coming up.
Yeah, you're right. Big decisions for the players. Ultimately, also big decision for coaches, right? Because it is how you use your young players. And you're right. Those coaches and those clubs that see the value in bringing through the young players will be able to take advantage of this. Obviously, it also will help coaches when they're going through those difficult spells of international call-ups and suspensions and injuries or whatever, to have it make it easier, how many young players they can play, where they can, they don't have to worry as much, as last year about, how many times have they been on the bench and, they already played their 2 games or anything like that. They can have more flexibility and more options. And so that should, and like you said, competition, so that should be really, really, really helpful. And it feels like they've created a little bit more space or a little bit more breadth in the pathway for more opportunities. But yeah, it will be interesting to see how this impacts, especially even the Whitecaps, right? Like there has been this, he sort of said it, but there has been this talent has come through, but it hasn't been able to kick on the way you would hope. And so maybe something like this can even help that just a little enough to have someone make a meaningful breakthrough, or like you said, get enough exposure where they have a pathway into what's next for them to help them grow and develop and achieve things in the game.
And there's no one correct pathway. It's like every single player's pathway is going to be different. For some players, going off to college is the thing. I'll pick Sydney Wathuta for an example. Came through the Whitecaps Academy, played in League One, went to college, came back this season, was the joint leading scorer in League One BC for the Whitecaps, 4 goals in 8 games, went back to college, won the College Cup, went into the draft, got selected by Colorado, this week signed a deal with Colorado Rapids 2 in MLS Next Pro.
So there's a good young example, current, local, like, meaningful. I'll choose an older one in terms of just when I think of late developer, personally, I think of Luca Toni. Very, very late developed central, big center forward for Italy that was nothing when he was young. It wasn't until he was like in his late 20s that he became like good and then played into his mid to late 30s or whatever, right? So yeah, you're right. There's not, people don't all blossom at the same way, and the pathway is not the same for everyone. You're right. There's not one way. Obviously, there's ways that intrinsically we would think are better, but it's not the same for everyone.
It's also the question as well is for these young guys coming through the Whitecaps Academy, you've got the CPL, you've got 2 teams in BC. There's a lot of guys in the academy from Alberta. There's a lot of guys from Ontario, so there's CPL options there as well. And it's like they then have to make the choice. Like a player like Grady McDonald, he made the choice, kind of betting himself. I think I'll improve by going to play against older players. I might not start every week. I might get limited minutes, but I just have to take my opportunity, learn in that environment and develop and see what happens. And we'll fully go into that in part 3, but he's got a move now. And would he have developed the same way if he'd gone to play for WFC 2? He might have played every single game, but I don't know that the eyes necessarily would have been on him. I don't know that he would have seemed to shine as much because you're playing against younger guys. He could have done great and got call-ups to the first team. He could have earned an MLS deal with the Whitecaps. Could have been in MLS for a couple of years and then earned an even bigger move in a couple of years' time. You just don't know. And that's what players now have to decide. It's like, well, if I sign now or if I stay in the Whitecap system, I've got the chance to play actual MLS games. I can play in 6 MLS games. Might just be fleeting minutes or who knows what happens. Canadian Championship, we've spoken about it. The dream for me, TSS beat Valor, and it's TSS Whitecaps. Now, realistically, the Whitecaps should be out of sight by the end of leg 1. Leg 2, perfect example to throw a few of these guys in. It's going to be interesting to see how all the clubs use this and how well they use it, but the Whitecaps in particular, we don't know what Jesper Sorensen is like as a coach in terms of youth. What we do know is the pressure's on him right away. He's coming into a new club. He's coming into a club that's won 3 straight Canadian championships, that's been in the playoffs the last 2 years. He has to show signs of improvement, or him and Axel and everyone knows, folk will say in a year's time, well, shouldn't have got rid of Vanni, it's gone backwards. Now, is he a guy that's going to believe in youth and throw that on? It's something we'll find out when we chat to him. But yeah, a lot of things. I like what MLS are doing, and we'll just kind of see how it all plays out this season. Now, a couple of other things that were kind of buried in the roster rules and various things is clubs still can decide whether they want to go the 3 DP route and 3 under-22 initiative players, or 2 DPs with 4 and get GAM. So that hasn't changed at all. The fact that the transfer windows now are back to what it should be and there's not a week's difference between Canada and America is fantastic. Don't know how the CPL clubs will feel about that, but it was ridiculous. It needs that every single club in North America has to be in the same window.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think this is very helpful, like you said, for the MLS clubs. I think it's very helpful that there's that sync up. Yeah, could this have been better for the CPL clubs? Yeah, I think you're right. It could have, but let's see how they adapt and adjust. And in one sense, within the North American landscape, they are the younger sibling, right? And so sometimes, yeah, things will favor the older child, and that's not always a horrible thing. But let's see how this works out. It's good. It's good. It was nice to see this. I feel like this time it was more public, like hey, this is happening or this is set or whatever. Whereas I feel in previous years it was like we were always like, wait, what's going on? And then we had to like dig. We had to dig somewhere or search websites and like figure it out. And this time at least it feels more clear and upfront and stuff.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
The other last thing, clubs can also have 2 buyouts now of players instead of the one. And Whitecaps last year used theirs on buying out Luis Martins. I mean, you look at a club like Toronto, and on the one hand, it would make sense. How do you solve the Insigne problem? You buy him out, you let him go. But that's going to be one hell of a large buyout if they did that. So obviously they want to try and not take a financial hit. But it's going to give clubs, if things aren't working out, if players want to go home for whatever reason, they can do this. It makes sense.
I mean, that's huge. I mean, you remember there's other years where I think even in Vancouver, they probably would have liked to have bought out 2 players. It was something that held them back.
Yeah.
And if that would have been huge for Vancouver, you can imagine how that would be for some other clubs or maybe it's easier or they're more likely to quickly take that action.
Oh yeah, I see Miami doing that. It's like, oh, there's some better guys we can bring in. Let's just buy these guys out, get a shot of them.
What's that? One of Messi's friends wants to play for 50 grand a year? Bring him in.
I mean, Whitecaps news this week has been slim pickings. Obviously, we've got a new coach, but outside of that, and at the time of recording, no new players. And everyone at the Whitecaps that I've spoken to in the last week, I've asked them the same question, Zach. Is Johnny Russell coming to Vancouver? Now, I've asked Axel 3 times now, and he's never said no. Now, he's never said yes, but he's never said no. So I'm still clinging on to that hope. Someone else at the club said, yeah, he's not coming. So I'm clinging on to Axel's hope. Someone that isn't coming is a short-lived rumour that got me excited for maybe 48 hours.
I saw how excited you were on social media, and I was like, "Oh, this would be an amazing sign." I told Kirk, I was like, "Guess who the Whitecaps will get signing?" And he was like, "Really?"
I mean, when Glass City put this out, I was skeptical. Not that I doubted Glass City's getting the information. I just was like, this doesn't sound like a deal the Whitecaps are going to get done. And then Tom Bogart the next day was like, my sources can confirm I've also heard this. And I was like, hey, maybe this has legs. And then on Sunday, it was all done and dusted and over. The player in question, if you don't live your life on social media, 20-year-old Uruguayan standout forward, Anderson Duarte. If anyone watched the 2023 World Cup last year, was amazing. Golden Boot winner. Absolutely phenomenal player for Uruguay. Was playing in Liga MX with Toluca. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, holy shit. That is one hell of a signing.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I wonder if the fact that that's now public, if someone else is going to swoop in and take him. Then we heard that Toluca weren't happy with the money that the Whitecaps were offering. And then I was like, was this even a thing to begin with? Or has it just been put out there? Is it another agent thing to kind of drum up business for the client? And then by Sunday, he'd been transferred to Mazatlan. I think the club and not the restaurant chain in the States. But I guess we'll see if I pop in for some tacos and he's serving behind the counter. We'll soon find that out. But yeah, Anderson Duarte, short-lived rumour. The one that got away, we can put that into our awards now for our end-of-year show. But what a sign that would be. But if we were genuinely linked with him and genuinely inquired, and that's the calibre of player that Axel is trying to bring in, I am impressed. And let's see if we can get someone else of that calibre. Of course, the big Whitecaps news of the week was the introduction of their new head coach, the 51-year-old Dane, Jesper Sorensen, introduced to media on Tuesday morning up at UBC. And we started off this part with the Rake song Open Book. And I guess that is a phrase you could probably use to describe former Whitecaps head coach Vanni Sartini. The Italian was never one to hide his emotions, whether on the sidelines, in the dugout, in the post-game press conferences, in the chats we had with him at training, in the chats we had with him on the podcast. He was very upfront, open, honest. It's something I loved about him so much. I loved his passion. There was like no filter sometimes with Vanni, and it was great. It was refreshing. In a world of football where folk are so candid and they don't like to give too much away, Vanni was a breath of fresh air, definitely an open book. I'm sure there was some things that he did keep close to his chest, and there's some things that he maybe put out there because he wanted to get them out there. And it's not that things were dragged out of him kicking and screaming. But the man to replace Vanni at the helm of the Whitecaps, 51-year-old Dane Jesper Sorensen. From first impressions, I don't want to say the polar opposite of Vanni in that regard, but definitely a change. It's definitely going to be something that media and fans and players are going to have to get used to. A much more candid figure, I think, much more reserved, keeps things to himself. We saw that at the introductory press conference from Jesper on Tuesday. His appointment made official late on Monday night, and off to Spain the very same day that he was introduced to the media on Tuesday. I'll get some of Zach's thoughts of his first impressions of Jesper from that press conference in a sec. Let's just bring you some audio from it. The full press conference, of course, you can find on all the Whitecaps social media channels, but this is just a couple of questions from myself and Felipe to the new Caps head coach. Welcome, Jesper. Michael McCall from AFTN. This vacancy came up in November. Obviously, you were still at Brøndby when that happened. Did you initially apply for the position, or did you only apply once you had been let go at Brøndby?
First of all, I'll just start out here saying that I'm very excited being here. Thank you very much. I'll answer the question afterwards. I think it's great being in Vancouver. I've been in Danish football for the entirety of my career, both as a player and also as a coach. But I'm very happy also to get the experience to now be at the MLS in a great city of Vancouver and also in a great country of Canada. I did not apply for anything while I was at Brøndby, just to answer the question, because they were my employer and I was working with them. I got available late in December, and then things started out from there.
So what was it then that's attracted you to Vancouver? I know you've lived in Canada for a couple of years with your wife about 5-6 years ago, but what attracted you then to MLS and to Vancouver and to get this chance outside of Denmark for the first time?
I think it's very attractive right now to see what's going on in the MLS. I think it's a league that everybody knows. There's creating more and more attention about. It's getting known everywhere now. Also in Europe, you hear much about it, and of course, I think it's a great experience for me. It's not like this is a great challenge for me. This is about the club. This is about, of course, the team, and I think also from what I've seen, it seems as if the team has been good. I know that there's excitement about football generally in North America right now, also due to the World Cup coming up. Of course there is, and the excitement is going up. And for me to have an opportunity to be part of that was, of course, it was easy for me to say when Axel actually told me that he would prefer me as the coach here. It was easy for me to say yes.
Hi Jesper, Felipe from AFTN. Welcome to Vancouver.
Thank you.
Building on sort of the tactical questions, fans have expected with the Whitecaps, or have known for the Whitecaps, of a very idealized style of play from the previous coach, very high-octane, transitional. Axel was talking about not a revolution, but just an evolution of this style of play, would it be safe to assume from fans that maybe you bring a more sense of pragmatism to your style of play? And how are you hoping to evolve from this very specialized kind of play that they were used to under the previous coach to under your reign?
Yeah, it's not that we want to do a low octane play or anything. Of course, we want to play a kind of football that also the fans would like to watch. Being the guys that want to challenge our opponents every time we play. Of course, we want to do that. We just have to do it collectively, and not that I'm saying that it haven't been done, but also maybe not all the time in such a high transition mode that has been done so far. Of course, we're gonna always, when we have the ball, try and see if we can create a chance and score a goal. But maybe a little more, more connected and more compact also when we have the ball.
And then just to try to get to know you better, what are some tactical, maybe coaching influences that you have from coaches that you worked with or coaches that you kind of look up to?
But there's a lot, right? Because you always look at what is going on. But there's a lot of good coaches I've learned a lot from, and also inspiring me for my side of football, the way I look at football and soccer. But yeah, in the beginning, Marcelo Bielsa was one, right? I think Jürgen Klopp is a guy that inspired many people. Also Pep Guardiola and stuff like that, but also coaches not as known for the normal public as a lot of other like the ones I just mentioned. So I get inspiration from many places, also from other sports, and you can find inspiration wherever you look and you want to find it.
Jesper Sorensen there, just explaining why he took this job, a little bit about the tactical nuances that he will bring to this team. So, Zach, I know you got a chance to watch the press conference in full, so curious really just what your initial thoughts are of Jesper Sorensen.
Yeah, no, I heard some really good things. They're encouraging signs, I think, for anyone who was worried about this transition. On the one hand, yeah, very drastically different personality than what there's been here for a while.
Very much so. But that is not necessarily a bad thing.
Exactly.
I mean, from our point of view, for doing stupid fun segments, maybe, but
yeah, seems like a good football person.
Yeah,
head on the shoulders, strong ideas and concepts, and seems like an intelligent move from Axel. He does not seem to be the type of personality that will sell tickets for them like Vandy did, or garner the admiration of pundits on TV around the country or the continent, but I think has the potential to have the Whitecaps play just as good or better football, or achieve more, especially in MLS as a league. Cups, that could go any way, especially when you might have to face the mighty TSS Rovers.
They do have a good draw to get to the semis, so
true.
Because even if it's not TSS, it's Valor, so they've got a good draw to get to the semis.
That's true. No, all in all, I think it's very positive, and I think fans who were afraid or nervous about all this, hopefully the temperature's dialed down and they're beginning to find peace in this and see. I think
some won't until the season starts.
That's fair.
Yeah, and it's a tough start to the season, and he knows that. And I liked in his introductory press conference when he spoke about he's not tied to formation. For him, it's just a starting point. Yep. And it's he sounds like he's got flexibility. He said there's no point playing a formation if the players you have don't fit that formation. That was refreshing to hear.
Yeah, lots of coaches have said those kinds of things, though.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it's the things you need to say, but if he backs it up, it's what you want. And it was one of our big complaints. So, I mean, the proof of the pudding will be obviously in the eating, and we'll see what he can do. But right now, it is exciting. Har had asked him what he liked to do for fun. And he was like, I'm not here for fun. I'm here to win football matches.
Good answer.
Yeah. But as he sat there wearing his black polo neck jumper, he revealed to her later that he was into jazz. I was like, of course you are. A little bit of beat poetry, I could see him doing that as well. But the Great Dane, I'm sure that will be the headline that will be getting chucked out if we're doing really well over the next few months. There's a coffee shop up at the UBC campus actually called the Great Dane. So if the Whitecaps and them don't get some kind of sponsorship deal going, I don't know what's wrong. Well, that is it for the Whitecaps chat for this episode. We're going to turn our attention to the CPL next, and we'll be back looking at the big clear-out at Vancouver FC out in Langley. We'll be back chatting about that and a lot more after the second song of this episode from this month's Album of the Month.
Hi, I'm Caden Chung, and you're listening to the AFTN Soccer Show.
This is a true story. I just woke up, everything was fucked. From the night before, I was beyond repair. I just woke up, everything was wrong. All the cats were dead, and the phones were gone. I just woke up, like a heart attack. I weren't coming back, I'm not dressed in black. I just woke up, everything was fucked, everything was fucked. Go and leave my circulation, go and leave my circulation, go and leave my circulation, go and leave my circulation. I just woke up in someone else's bed. She was overweight. What did I do last night? I found paradise in between her thighs. It was quick and nice. My feelings cold as ice. I've been hard and warm, and I had the shakes. Had to eat some food, or I was gonna faint. I just woke up. I just woke up. Everything was fucked. Everything was fucked. Go and leave my circulation. Go and leave my circulation. Go and leave my circulation. Go and leave my circulation.
Welcome back to the AFTN Soccer Show on CITR Radio 101.9 FM. And kicking off this part, it's the second of our songs from this month's Album of the Month, the 2005 album Capture release from English post-punk band The Rakes. We played an album track to kick off part 2, another album track for you to kick off this part, track 5, a song all about the mixed emotions of a one-night stand, and that was The Guilt. And we'll have one, maybe two more songs from the album and from The Rakes in the next episode of the podcast. But we'll get back to the football chat now. For this part, we're turning our attention to the CPL, the Canadian Premier League, and quite a lot to talk about locally and nationally. It's been a bit of a week for, I wanted to say drama, that's more out east, but it's definitely some big talking points here in the Lower Mainland at Vancouver FC. Now, I don't want to say, well, the last person at Vancouver turned out the lights. It's kind of feeling that way. But as things currently stand, Zach, I feel, looking at the roster, you've got a chance of making it onto the team this year.
Oh, Michael.
I hope that isn't the case for everyone's sake, but it is very interesting because on Monday, the club put out what you've been asking for a couple of weeks.
It was
as soon as the podcast went out, then they dropped it a couple of hours later.
Yeah.
All the roster releases were confirmed, and at the time of that email, there was 12 players signed to the 2025 roster. We'll come to those shortly, but there were some very interesting announcements on it. Some we knew, some we suspected, and some maybe shocked along the way. So
I don't know about shocked, but yeah.
Well, I guess if anyone hadn't heard any murmurs, it may be shocked. So the club declined 2025 options on defenders Caden Chung and Anthony White, midfielders Renan Garcia, Olivier Romans, and Zach Verhoeven. And they transferred attacker Gabby Bitar to York United, receiving York's first pick in the 2026 U Sports draft. They also confirmed free agents Rocco Romeo and, I'm sorry for you, but Austin Ricci will not return to the club in 2025. Now, Rocco Romeo's already found a new home in Valor, a returning home.
His old home,
in Valor, yeah. Caden Chung is strongly linked with a return to his old haunt over on the island at Pacific. Anthony White, I believe, is gone back to college at the University of Toronto. And Zach Verhoeven, we don't know what the future has in store for him, or Austin Ricci, although...
No, yeah, let's talk about Austin Ricci for one quick second.
Yeah, I mean, if you read some articles, Zach, a hot property for clubs around.
My goodness. So my son alerted me to this. The article on the CPL website by Charlie Clark and Mitchell Tierney, who I, in general, have a good respect for and appreciation for. But the article is entitled 11 high-caliber CPL free agents that could be on the move. And it said this about Austin Ricci. The 28-year-old forward has been in the league since its inaugural season, spending time with York Valor and most recently Vancouver FC on loan. A tenacious attacker with an ability to score from distance. Ricci has regained health in recent years after missing large parts of 2021 and almost all of 22 with injury. With 70 games of CPL experience, 12 goals and 6 assists in that time, he would be an excellent fit for any club looking for a reliable attacker who can make an impact off the bench as well.
Oh, especially from distance.
Yeah, so obviously he's not a fit at Vancouver, and the dude cannot score from distance as he I
mean, you're setting this up now that he's going to sign for a team. They're going to play against Vancouver and he's going to score a 40-yard rocket or something.
Yeah, I have no worries about that whatsoever, Michael. I don't know.
I think everyone knew he was away. Everyone knew Zach Verhoeven was away. I think folks suspected Garcia, Romans, and White would probably be away. Caden Chung might have surprised some. I'd heard murmurs last year that he wasn't happy with maybe playing time at the club, but did want to stay, but also did want out.
Yeah, see, I feel like I haven't talked to him about those specifics. I feel like the playing time thing, though, is I feel like whenever he wasn't playing, he was injured. Now, maybe there were a couple times near the end of the year where that was not the case.
It might also be as well that he wasn't getting played where he would maybe like to have played.
Oh, and that's totally valid.
And I think that could factor into... Because, I mean, I spoke to you towards the end of last year saying, I've heard this about Caden, that he might be on the way out. And you were like, I don't think so, because he's taking part in the coaching staff with the U19s.
But literally Sunday evening, he was coaching the U19s. One of our people was there, and they were like, hey, so Caden's at the U19 game. Is there any chance that he stays? And I was like, yeah, no. That's not happening. No,
I wish him well if he goes back to Pacific. It's a great pickup for Pacific, who are slowly building a semi-decent team. I think there's still a lot of holes needing filled there, but there's another rumour about a player that might be going back to Pacific that we'll come to in a little bit. But I think they're slowly doing some good business there.
It seems like they could be picking up some good players. Yeah, I mean, Caden Chung, obviously, Caden Chung is one of those players for both you and I, Michael, who's someone we've been watching him for years. Like, we've watched him from a youth player all the way up, so many different levels, representing Canada in different competitions and playing in different leagues and all kinds of stuff. And so he's just a player and a person I have a lot of time for. And I was really stoked when he signed at Vancouver FC. And I really think that in both years, really, I feel like as Caden went, so went the club, like on the pitch.
Yeah, I mean, it was like year one. That was a huge loss for him.
It was a massive loss, and it was a double loss in one sense because Afshin felt he had to play him in midfield because they had a signing who they couldn't get into the country for visa reasons. So he was shifted in the midfield. So you lost him at right back, firstly, and then you lost him in the middle of the park where they desperately needed him. And then, but
I mean, to be honest, I didn't feel it was that big a loss last year because of the other pieces that were at the club that could kind of slot into those roles. And maybe that's been a bit harsh on Caden, but he was a key piece to them.
Yeah, well, the squad was definitely improved in year two, even if the results are similar or the standings are similar, or, the placement in the standings was similar. The squad itself and the quality was vastly improved. And obviously, like someone likes to note very often, the opening quarter of the season was going seemingly so well. It was the final three quarters of the season. So
I believe I have the points totals here.
But no, Caden Chung also, maybe we'll talk about this more another time, but he also just connected because if one, leaving, but two, the potential of going to the direct rival, which he has played at before in Pacific. I really appreciate him because he's reached out to connect about that, and maybe on one of our other shows we'll talk more about that. Once things are all kind of settled. But I mean, I appreciate him.
We'll sit down with Caden as well and have we'll get him on the show again.
So I appreciate him on a human level because he's I think a great human being and also an incredibly respectable and respectful individual, and so I have a lot of time for him. And just like when back in the day when I follow him, whatever his next team was, I will follow him, at Pacific. And he's the kind of player like an opponent that I won't be getting, chirping or getting on the back or whatever because of my respect for him.
I wish him all the best. I'm glad he's going to Pacific. As soon as I found out that he was out, I thought Pacific would probably be a landing spot for him unless he wanted to try his hand overseas or whatever. So I think it'll be a good fit. I think he'll thrive again there, and hopefully he can get his career back on track. Two of the other ones quickly just to talk to you about. Gabby Bitar to York. Now, it came out initially, I think, on Reddit, and then it was all over Discord towards the end of last year that Gabby wasn't happy. He was trying to get the club not to pick up his option. He wanted to leave. He's got that now, if that was the case. He's going to York. I think it's a great pickup for York, and it's a big loss, I think, for Vancouver.
Yeah, Gabby Bitar, someone I obviously don't know as well as Caden Chung or some of the other people we'll talk about. But in the time where I've seen him play, in Edmonton and here in the Lower Mainland, a person I just have a lot of time for. Appreciate what he brings. I think he is a person who can excel even beyond what he's already shown in CPL. He has that potential. One thing I would say is that in a number of conversations with a number of different people about the squad makeup of Vancouver, you had guys like Gabby, and there's, let's say, two or three others who kind of fit this same sort of scenario where they are creative. They can both create for themselves and for others. They can score goals from distance, or even good at getting behind occasionally or whatever, getting in alone, and can score, but they aren't consistent enough. And so what tends to end up happening is in that inconsistency, your coach is then going to try some of those other options. And it feels like there was just too many players who fit that motif. And I kind of had this sense going into this offseason, like they are not all going to end up being in Vancouver come April or whatever. And so far, now two of them have gone. One of those is Gabby, and another one is maybe this is jumping ahead for you, Michael, but another one is the retiring Ben Fisk.
Yeah, we'll come to Ben in a sec. So I want to talk about Rocco first, because he's another guy, been with the club for the 2 seasons. Now, I'll be honest, I've never rated him. I don't think he's good. I thought there was better centre-backs there. I thought Matteo Campagna should have had more playing time than him last year. I'm obviously big on Anthony White as well, slight TSS and Whitecaps bias there. But I didn't think Rocco was that good a player. I know the fans loved him. I know he loved being at the club. He loved playing in Vancouver. And I don't know if it was his choice that he wanted to go, if he would have liked to have stayed. But I think it's good that Vancouver wanted to move on. Hopefully someone can give him a hug.
Oh my. Rocco, a great dude. I had heard the same things about you in the beginning of CPL, that, coming out of his time with, what was it, TFC and even overseas, that he hadn't quite developed into the center back that they had hoped. Then see him in the CPL, I felt, okay, those knocks were valid. Then when he came to Vancouver, I thought, okay, let's have a closer look. And yeah, when you look, if you want to put together a highlight reel of Rocco, there are some really great moments defensively. He scores some goals, but there are some shortcomings in his game. I know, for example, I don't think it was so much him had to do with him, Michael. I think I said this on the show before. I didn't see, excuse me, the
cohesion and understanding.
Oh, no. Well, not even the cohesion. I just don't think I think Afshin wanted more from him and expected more from him.
Yeah.
And
I did too.
On both sides of the ball. I know I've heard Afshin say before that, like, he can't believe, I think he said this publicly, I think in pregame or postgames or whatever, that he can't believe that a player of his size and ability has never scored a headed goal in his time at least in Vancouver. Like he has like 4 or 5 goals, and they're all, tap-ins or not tap-ins, but shots with his feet and whatever. And just, yeah.
It's crazy.
You were talking about the decision. I think it was probably Vancouver's and probably Afshin Gatpi's decision not to bring him back. But the most telling thing to me in all of this, because I know, there are a lot of people who support Vancouver FC who are disappointed about this and sad about this. The number one telling thing in all this for me, Michael, is where he's landed.
Once again, I'm delighted.
He's returned to Valor, where he played before.
Yeah.
In Valor, if you want to talk about his time with Vancouver FC, Valor is the only team that's been worse than Vancouver FC in his 2 years there. And so he's going now. Obviously, you can go there and make them better, and different coach and a different scenario and whatever. And I know it seems like they're mostly happy to have him back. I think that says something. Like, if he had gone to USL, I would have been like, yeah, good for him. Like, way to go. The fact that he's
a Forge or even a York or an Ottawa, you'd be like, well, he feels he's a better team.
Yeah, all of those would made more sense. They're all in Ontario, close to where he's from. But the Valor thing just feels like, and he's what, like 24. It feels like, can he develop to become better than he currently is? I don't know if he's reached his ceiling. For his sake, I hope not. And let me
he's a lovely lad as well.
He's a great dude. I've loved every conversation I've had with him, both formal, in the pregame, postgame stuff, and informal. The informal ones I obviously enjoyed even more. But as a person, as a dude, I really appreciate him, and I do also appreciate the massive contributions he still has made in his time at Vancouver. But I feel like I think Vancouver FC can get even more from the center back position, and we'll see if this season shows it to be true. But I am really excited as a later announcement of the week came out. You were sort of referenced there, and is that Mateo Capagna is back. He's someone I know that Afshin, I believe, thinks that he can get even more out of, and he can continue to grow and blossom into a great young player, and he has high hopes for, and I think the club in general does.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Rocco, and Vancouver need to get better defensively, and I just don't see them doing that with him being the guy that is in the centre of your defence and starting most of the games. But those decisions, as of Monday, left Vancouver with 12 players on the roster. A couple of goalkeepers, 3 defenders, 4 midfielders, and 3 attackers. But then there was the announcement on Wednesday of the return of James Cameron, Mateo Capagna, and a bit of a surprising one in Tyler Crawford, who's been out injured. But I think the general understanding is the club are doing right by him, sticking by him till he at least gets over this injury, and then see where that takes both parties.
Yeah, I think
And I admire them for that.
I think I know some people are like, oh, why didn't they say that in the announcement? Well, I think you'll hear that from Afshin in the preseason as he's talking about different players and is asked about different players. But yeah, absolutely. Like they really need to be applauded for, I think, for re-signing or taking the option of Tyler. Tyler won't play for 5 to 7 months, would be my guess right now, based on the massive injuries, significant injuries he had. Like I've said to you and probably said on the show before, he's a young man I have a lot of time for. I've really enjoyed watching him play from the first friendly I went to the last time I saw him play when he was scoring that goal from center mid against the Fulham U19s or U21s or whatever they were, out in Kamloops. And so, yeah, I've seen him a number of times in his recovery at games and at other places. And yeah, I think this is really great. Just so people understand, when his contract ended in December 31st or whatever it was, he would have then been on his own to oversee and take care of his own recovery, his own rehab. His family, although he grew up in Ontario, if my memory's not wrong, his family moved to Florida for his dad's job, and his family lives in Florida. Now, the quality of care he could get in Florida would actually have been really great. However, it would cost a ton of money. So by the fact that Vancouver FC has taken his contract option, he'll come back and his recovery will be able to continue to be covered by Vancouver and looked after by their people, is how I understand it. Like maybe my understanding is limited in that, but that's how I understand it. And so hopefully,
which is nice. It's how you want to see players treated.
Totally. So hopefully he has a good recovery. And like you said, then we'll see where things go for there, both for him and for the club and what's next.
So those three players took the squad to 15, and you're like, oh, they're starting to get there. In amongst that 15, though, it looks like three of them, definitely one of them, but pretty much three of them you can take them out of the equation. So we're back down to 12. So the big announcement from a player that we know so well and love here at AFTN, and we wish things had worked out differently, Ben Fisk, hanging up his boots, aged just 31, taking a job in the Vancouver front office where he had also been working anyway whilst playing. And I think it's fair to say his playing time last year wasn't what he wanted or hoped or expected when he came here.
Not at all.
We talked about it. We asked him about it. It's what I thought was going to happen and how the season was going to play out for him. This is a chance for him to go out on his own terms and not just be a guy that's hanging around for another couple of years and just getting a bit part here, a bit part there, picking up a salary but not really making a difference. Now he can make a difference to the club, to the league, to his fellow players because he's involved with the union and everything as well. And it's sad to see him hang his boots up so early and maybe never get to that level that we hoped when we first saw him here back in the Whitecaps Academy back in the day. But wish Fisky nothing but the very best.
Forever Ben 10, man. Yeah, obviously incredibly mixed emotions about it. Like happy for him and this opportunity. Sad that I won't be able to support him and watch him play. From the time he was 15 or whatever is when we started watching him, maybe 14 even. He just plays the game in such a wonderful way. We saw him score so many great goals, so creative. At that age, of course, he played you could say he played in a side that was mostly dominant in most of the games they played in, which allowed him to express himself, to show the flair he had for football and score some incredible goals and set up incredible goals and work with, be a great teammate and all that kind of stuff. And so in one sense, I'm just thankful that, I got to see him in his last tour of duty. Excited that, like you said, he's sticking around, but I'm also sad that this is the end and it kind of definitely didn't. I mean, he's ending on his own terms, but knowing that it didn't end the way he would have liked, makes me a little bit sad. Also, a little bit sad they won't. That is a similar case with a Ben McKendry, a guy. I was
about to say both the Bens now out of the game.
Yeah, again, just have so much time for him, so much respect for him, and I'm really excited and hope that his off the field career in football is as good or maybe even better than what we saw from him on the field. And I wish him all the best and look forward to obviously being able to continue to have a have a good connection with him in his role at the club. And when that image was put out and I saw those boots, I was like, oh no.
Yeah. I messaged you right away. I was like, Fisky retiring?
Yeah.
It kind of makes sense. If he wasn't going to get playing time, it didn't seem that he was going to be in Afshin's plans. I don't think that there was any point in him just riding the bench, being another unhappy player, especially when you're working in the front office. It's tough if you're not happy as a player, but you still have to then promote the club in the front office. Now you can give his full attention to that.
Yeah. And so going back to what I was saying before, I think he was one of the players, him, Gabby Bitar, the other one would be Mickey. They're all these kind of attacking players, can do some good stuff creating, can score goals, can shoot from range, can get into good positions in close. But none of them were as consistent as you would want them to be. And I knew for sure that there was no way that all of them were going to be back this year. Mickey, I think, has a guaranteed contract, so I should probably be least surprised by that. But I am a little bit surprised that Ben's retiring, and a little bit surprised that it's Gabby that's gone away. But I knew they wouldn't all be around.
Yeah. So I mean, one of the older players in Fisk hung up his boots, and two of the younger guys are heading to pastures new as well. Rising starlet, 17-year-old Grady McDonnell, the Irish international, which I think now that he's got a move coming up to Europe, might be pushing him more in that Irish direction than Canada, but I mean, who knows?
It's his Irish passport that enables him to make this move, right?
Yes, at the age that he is, yeah.
Is he 17 already? I thought he was still 16.
I thought he was 17. Let me double check that.
We signed him when he was 15, so he's got to be 16.
Oh, no, you're right. He's still 16. He's 17 next month in February. So I'm just aging him a little bit. Yeah, I mean, we knew this was going to be on the cards. We'd heard murmurs for quite a while now that there was something up, that he was going to be going over to Europe, and he's heading to Club Brugge's second team. The initial reports that were out for the money, Manuel Veth from Transfer Market, confirmed that isn't the case. It looks like Vancouver FC are getting 200,000 for the deal. Euros. But 35,000 of that goes to the agent, so they'll get about 165 euros. Still a good return for a player that you've only had in your system for a year. I'm sure the Whitecaps still kicking themselves.
Well, so yeah, that's like 200,000 Canadian plus the sell-on fee is the sell-on percentage.
That's where you'll make the real money if he makes it, and if there's no guarantee that he will. We've been there before with players. Then the club could really start to get some good money from this. I think it's a good landing spot, second tier in Belgium, chance to prove himself. He's such a talent. And I saw people saying, oh, Jesse Marsh should call him up to the Canadian national team now. I wouldn't want that, because you're forcing something on a young lad to make a decision really early, whereas you don't know where his career is going to go. Say he doesn't develop at the pace that Canada want, and then there's better players come along, but he's already committed. He's given up the chance to play international football. Yeah,
but I mean, I don't have a problem with anything you said there, except for I think that, and hopefully they are, Jesse Marsh, his staff, they need to be in contact with Grady and his family. They need to be having conversations with them, right? Like the whole dual national thing. It's kind of ironic, Michael, because now it's past midnight. Do you know what today is? Today is the 44th birthday of Owen Lee Hargraves.
Ha!
Who is, maybe the first real big wound for many Canadians when it comes to the conversation of dual nationals and Canada losing out on them. It's also ironic that, I don't know if it's official yet or whatever, but it's likely to be official this week, that another guy who could have played for Canada is going to be sold for $80 million, going from Eintracht Frankfurt to Manchester City in Omar Marmoush. So the dual national thing is significant. Canada needs to be proactive.
But the thing with Hargreaves, so he came through the Canadian system and made the switch, whereas Grady's been with Ireland.
These things, like you said, there's all these different pathways, and we've done the same. We've taken guys who didn't come through our youth system, and then we got them when they're older. It's different for everyone. All I'm saying in the end, Michael, is the CSA, and specifically the men's national coach and his team, need to be talking to these people, right? They need to be in conversation with them. Even if the conversation is, hey, we understand you're committed to Ireland youth system right now, but just so you know, we'd love to have you in for a camp sometime. Not like, hey, we want to cap tie you tomorrow.
Yes.
But hey, we want to, would you be open to, our youth national team? Or would you be interested in a senior camp or whatever? Or not even, maybe not even that. Maybe it's literally just beginning a relationship with them, via phone and conversation or whatever. Because you need to have those bridge, because for every young player at some point, no matter what youth national team they're with, at some point they have to make the decision to say, yeah, I'm going to stay here. I'm going to stick with this and go all the way. And they do that because they have a relationship, they have contact. And so all I'm saying is we need to make sure that our connectivity to players like Grady McDonald is number one, existent, and probably number two, meaningful, appropriate, and, done in a way that makes us a viable option for them. And I don't say it doesn't have to be enticing. That doesn't have to be, dishonest in how it's presented, but it needs to be done in a meaningful way.
It's obviously a loss for Vancouver because of the talent that it can be. It's a great gain because they're getting the money. On the other hand, though, he didn't play tons and tons of minutes, so it's not a huge loss to the team in that sense.
It's a different kind of hole, for sure.
Yes.
I think the biggest part of it is, behind the scenes, the biggest part of it is the money. The money now and the money, hopefully, long term. But what it does, Michael, is it begins to give proof to the pudding of the whole language around Football Factory, which is not my language, but the language that they have been using and the way in which they've been talking now, right? And I know some people don't like that or have questions about that or whatever, but this gives that legs. And so it was crazy to see, Fabrizio Romano be the one to break that. I wonder. I have questions about how that all came to be, but it's good for them. It's good for the league. It's good for Canadian football. I think it's good for Grady. Looking forward to obviously being made official and all that kind of stuff. But
we should say at the time of recording it isn't official. And neither is the second thing we're going to mention, which is James Cameron is down with Colorado Rapids just now for pre-season down in Mexico. He will be signing with them, is what I've been told. The only thing I'm not 100% sure is if it's to the MLS team or MLS Next Pro. I think it's going to be MLS Next Pro, to be honest.
I would say, I've heard there's maybe some hiccups or some things that have to be overcome there. But I too expect him to be part of the Colorado Rapids. I would be a little bit disappointed if it was MLS Next Pro. I hope for CPL as a league to kind of be beyond that. I think in one sense you can look at the Mo Farsi situation in that, that's the road he went. He went MLS Next Pro, worked his way up in the Columbus system, and then, at least in some respects came good. I would hope that someone like James is able to, maybe go right into Colorado's, maybe not first team, but the first team squad. But regardless, hopefully, again, this is another meaningful move that brings that shows the various ways in which Vancouver FC can help players move on to different clubs as they progress as players, which is, again, good for the bottom line of the football club and also good for the players, right? So
the thing I would say though about Cameron, why I think it's more likely to be Rapids too, is I don't think he had a fantastic CPL season, and I don't think he's MLS ready.
Yeah, I don't know that he's MLS starter ready. Like I would agree with you there. I think he is someone who, if in the first team environment, could play significant minutes for a side like Colorado this year. But based on what I saw of Colorado last year, they could use a lot of help in a lot of different ways. So all that to say, if he was in the part of their MLS first team, I could see him making contributions throughout the season and growing as a player and bettering himself. Because all these players, I talked to different people, and a lot of them for example, with Grady, they talk about his ceiling is incredibly high. With James, a lot of people are like, yeah, he has a high ceiling and play at a very high level. I've also talked to other people who say like, he might not be able to make it to Europe, right? Yeah. So, but all that to say is I hope that he'll grow, he'll develop. It's going to be fun to watch him, and and hopefully Grady as well. And then, like you are also hinting at, Michael, looking forward to how Vancouver FC fills out the roster and brings in some more meaningful.
Well, yeah, I mean that's the last thing we'll talk about them for this bit. It's 3 months to the season start, so there's no need to hit panic buttons. But you look at these other roster moves that's getting done around the league, and you're like, oh, Vancouver's roster is not looking strong, but there's got to be things in the pipeline, surely.
Well, there's probably that, but also, Michael, you got to remember, you're hearing a lot of the CPL news around, especially Forge and to a lesser degree Cavalry, because they're in the CONCACAF Cup, right? So their seasons have started way before everyone else. Their preseasons have started way before everyone else. Their competitive games will start way before everyone else, and so that's, I think, partly with the discrepancy there. So
Although York, Halifax, they're adding, and Valor even, they're adding a number of pieces.
Oh, you're not wrong I don't think it's wrong to say that Vancouver's had the least additions to their club in the off season.
The other thing with that is, and we've spoke about it on the show, there is a certain reputation that might go around the league about what it's like to play in Vancouver just now. So you do wonder, does that hamper players wanting to come here, or if that's just overblown by internet rumours and stuff as well?
True, yeah.
Guess we'll see how that plays out. I think that's probably a good place to draw the line under the Vancouver FC chat for this episode. It's not it for the CPL chat, though. We're going to continue that in the final part of this show. And we're going to be looking at a returning face and a departing one as well. And of course, we'll bring you this episode's wavelength. We'll be back with all of that after this episode's Britpop song.
Hey, it's Marco Bustos. You're listening to the AFTN Soccer Show.
Welcome back to the AFTN Soccer Show on CITR Radio 101.9 FM. And kicking off this part, it's this episode's Britpop song. And I mentioned in the last show, this is one of those weeks where there wasn't really any new releases in the Britpop genre to bring you from 30 years ago. So I'm going to go back 31 years and to a band that I've spoken about before when we're doing our Britpop chat. If you ask me to name the main Britpop bands, one of the bands you have to mention is York band Shed 7, a band that started in 1990, went until 2003, had a little 4-year hiatus before coming back in 2007, and some may say going even stronger today than they were during the Britpop era. They've just had their first 2 #1 albums, both in the same year, in 2024. And that is a song that started it all off for them, released on March 7th, 1994. It was a double A-sided single. One side was Mark, the other one was that song Casino Girl. Both the tracks featured on the band's debut album Changegiver, that was released in September 1994. Still a fantastic song, still sounds fresh today, and really captures the essence and the sound of the band and the Britpop era. And Shed 7 were a band that they maybe didn't get all the critical appreciation back in the day. they were dismissed as like lad rock because so many of their songs you could just belt out and just sing along to, like pub rock kind of stuff. And I mean, amazing choruses, amazing hooks, and yeah, that is one of them. If you're unfamiliar with them, I highly recommend checking them out. There's 7 albums that you can get going with. Their debut album, Change Giver, highly recommended. And their last one, Liquid Gold, is kind of a reworking of some of their songs from their 30-year career. Got an orchestral addition to that to kind of really flesh the tracks out. But I would definitely recommend checking out their first 2 albums, Change Giver from 94 and A Maximum High from 1996. We'll be back with another Britpop song in the next episode. For any newbies, we are paying tribute to 30 years of Britpop with songs that we played towards the end of last year and all through 2025. Fantastic period for music. But let's get back to the football chat now, and we'll continue chatting about the CPL in this part. One player that looks like he's heading back to the CPL, another friend of the show, Marco Bustos. Looks like his time in Sweden is over. And another player that looks like he could be going back to Pacific.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
I looked to see how he'd been doing in Sweden, because I've got to be honest, I hadn't paid too much attention after his first kind of season there. Just looking at the hard stats, 3 goals in 37 appearances, and his team were involved in a relegation playoff battle. Doesn't look like he's quite hit the dizzy heights he maybe hoped to.
Yeah.
But I don't know, have we seen the best of Marco Bustos? Can he come back home and re-find and rekindle the Bustos that we saw that got him that move to Sweden?
Yeah, I mean, for Marco, I'd hope so. Yeah, it will be interesting to see, as really like with any player, as you come back from an experience like this, how much have you grown as a player and to a different degree as a person, right? Yeah, because I think a motivated, fully engaged Marco Bustos is obviously a game changer at the CPL level. Mm-hmm. He could, a team could ride him to great achievements, but I don't think even in his time in the CPL that's ever been fully unlocked.
No, he didn't rise to the heights of Valor, but then he didn't have a great supporting cast around him. He did on occasions at Pacific, and when he was great, he was great. And then when he wasn't on, he just kind of disappeared from some games as well. So he's the type of player that he can be a bit of a flair player. He can be one of those luxury players. I'm not sure Pacific can totally afford that by the way that their squad is. But yeah, if he ends up going back there, that will be an interesting one. So we'll certainly keep an eye on that. So while we're talking about all these comings and goings, one player that doesn't look like he's going to be in the CPL this season, or at least not in orange, because who knows where he might go, is the player with the best name, I think, in all of the CPL for me. I would have loved to have commentated on one of his games. I've got to say, Beni Badibanga, who the news, I was going to say broke, but it's like he kind of broke it himself on social media when he made a comment that he was not under contract to Forge, and that as far as he was concerned, he had terminated his contract with Forge on January 6th, citing a number of things.
Well, first it was the social media post said for just cause or something.
Yeah, that was the initial thing. And then there's a good article on Northern Tribune. John Jacks does such a fantastic job on that site. So he published an article on Sunday around it, and I'm going to kind of read from it, because obviously there's some legal things from this. So we're going to read this from the article as well. But according to John, Badibanga is back in Belgium. He hasn't gone down to Forge to Mexico. The article says that Badibanga has retained a lawyer and says that Forge operated in bad faith after having given him verbal promises that the club would sell him if an offer came in at a particular price. And what his side are saying is more than one offer came in that matched that price, but then Forge wanted more and moved the goalposts and wanted more before they would accept an offer that then didn't come. Badibanga feels that is a breach of an agreement. It was also that if he didn't want to be there, they wouldn't pick up his option that they've had. We've had these discussions before about options in MLS at CPL level. Are they legal? If it got challenged in a court, is the option thing something that would fall down? We don't know because no one's ever done it. But on the back of what happened last year with Tristan Henry, that got really messy and didn't cover Forge in a good light, it has to be said, this is more drama that I'm sure they could do without.
Whatever, I can't remember whatever happened with Henry.
He got his move in the summer.
Yeah, was it on a free? Was it a termination of contract? Or?
That I can't remember. I'll check that while we get your thoughts on this.
I can't remember if they got money for him.
Well, I looked at Tristan Henry, and the things that I'm finding, it doesn't say what, it just says that Memphis signed him. It doesn't say how. They signed him to a multi-year deal, which was then ironic that they folded at the end of the year, and he became a free agent, and he's now with Phoenix, which is a great landing spot for him.
That is. People can say what they want, like a player like him can say what they want, but ultimately, if it wasn't in the contract, I mean, obviously, my preference would be that, you know, if they did indeed say these things to him, whether it was, you know, Bobby or whoever from the club made these commitments to him, obviously you'd want them to live those out. However, if they're not in the contract, you don't have like release clauses or release amounts or whatever, you can understand why a Forge would say, yeah, originally we thought we would be willing to let him go for this amount, but now he's performed for us and he's performed exponentially well, and his market value is far beyond that price that, you know, he had talked to us about before. That's not in writing, that's not in a contract. So we do need more, because you can say they moved the goalpost, but I think it's fair to argue that his performance moved the goalposts, right? So it's like, I don't know. So if it's a little bit awkward. I mean, they've obviously moved quickly to have cover for him as opposed to have partners for him and bringing in Brian Wright. And Mo Babuli hasn't signed, but obviously
it's not been officially announced, but all the things are that he's going there as well.
Yeah, and then they've been talking to Nimick, right? Who else have they brought in? They brought in some, like, they've been just taking the best players from around the league, kind of thing.
Yeah. Which is something that I do hate that happens. And it goes back to what we were talking about in the first part about potential that happening in MLS when you can just splash some cash and you go to the bigger teams. And it's understandable that players want to go to the teams that's going to win trophies or be in the hunt at the end of the year, but it's not ideal.
Yeah,
Badibanga is a great player. I'd take him at the Whitecaps, or at least have a look at him.
Yeah, I don't know. Is that unfair though? Like
no, I mean I totally see that point. It's like, that's the thing with this option as well. Like, players are signing these and knowing that the options are there and then saying, oh, no, it's not really what I agreed to. Yeah. And it's like, it really is.
So as much as I'm in some part sympathetic to his plight, you going on social media and saying, no, my contract's terminated for just cause is absolutely meaningless. Mm-hmm. It's like Camilo going to take a picture down at down in Mexico with the jersey on or in the equipment room or whatever. You can do that. You can say that. But what does it really mean?
Yeah. It's more drama, more of a mess. Hopefully, I mean, by the time this comes out, because we are recording it on Sunday and this is a fast-moving story, there could be more stuff that comes out. That is the danger of doing this a couple of days before we publish it. But it came as a surprise to me, I've got to say. He's such a good talent. I guess we'll see how that goes.
Even if he's gone, they're not going to miss him. It is interesting, though.
Well, to an extent. But if the other guys step up, they won't.
Exactly. It is interesting to note, though. They are now without. They confirmed Taron Campbell's gone, Hadjipour's gone, Jordan Hamilton also gone, right? Because Wright was wearing his number 9 in the.
I do wonder if Hadjipour might end up coming back to Pacific as well.
Yeah, I could see him.
I'd heard Campbell was coming out of Vancouver, so I guess we'll see if that was ages ago, and then it all went cold in that. So I guess we'll see. Yeah,
I've heard the same about that, but then he also quite struggle with injury last year.
Yeah,
that's the one concern. But if he did play for VFC, they would have like the top 2 all-time leading scorers in the league history, right? As a potential partnership,
which is a pretty good marketing point. As long as they're scoring, no point marketing that and it doesn't happen.
Yeah,
but that's pretty much it for the CPL chat. Unless there's anything you want to add.
I was going to say, Hajapor's parents were faithful at every Forge game. They're wearing their Hajapor's Forge jerseys in the crowd. I assume they were his parents, but no, very, very nice people. And yeah, I think he'll find a landing spot. I'd be surprised. In some ways, I'd be surprised if it was back at Pacific, but maybe.
I mean, he'd gone over, I think, to Bulgaria from the Whitecaps Academy. So I mean, maybe he'll fancy a look over in Europe.
I felt for him the move to Forge was a bit of a sideways move, other than the fact that he's playing continentally more and stuff.
Yeah.
Or whatever. But
he did well there.
I don't know that his performances last year, necessarily deserve this. But he's a player too who maybe like is USL the option for him, where he can make more money and again maybe grow in a kind of a different environment. But he's older now. How old is he?
I mean, he must be about 26 now, surely.
Yeah, so because he did 3 years at Pacific, and then this has got to be 3 years at Forge.
Let's have
at least 2. I think it's 3 years at Forge. But the dude likes to score in finals, so
he is 25. He's just turned 25.
Yeah,
that was close.
Yeah, interesting to see what's next for him.
Yeah. Well, that is it for our CPL chat. We've got one more bit of the show to go, of course, which is this episode's Wavelength. And for anyone that's newish to the show, Wavelength is the section where we play a song all about football, or at least loosely based about football. As Zach would say sometimes, it's a little tenuous. But we're going back to 1996 for this episode. A band we've played before in Wavelength. English folk punk band, The Men They Couldn't Hang. We played their song Rosettes before on the show. So this is a song from 96 from the band's 6th album, Never Born to Follow. And in light of what we were talking about in the last show, the death of Scottish legend Denis Law, this is a song called Denis Law and Ali McGraw. And it's a song that name-checks footballers Denis Law, Norman Bite Your Legs Hunter, Gary Sprake, Terry Cooper, along with Swansea City and a whole host of iconic 1970s things like Curly Whirlies and Aztec bars and rally choppers and things that Zach and most of our listeners will not have any idea what I'm talking about. But this is The Men They Couldn't Hang, Denis Law and Ali McGraw.
Aztec bars, was there really life on Mars? Jumping Jackie Palo, Jackson Brown, Hillman Hunters, Norman Hunter, Gary Sprake, Denis Law and Ali McGraw and all of Hattie Jakes, Chippers, Tomahawks and Choppers, and Red Space Hoppers, Crosshopper, Pachang Hang. Confess you wore a rally jacket, is it all a blur? I'm gonna get a rally jacket, gonna get a girl. This time tomorrow's out of fashion. Everybody's future's in the breeze. I wanna live like all our yesterdays. In the 1970s, fixing my radio. See my baby child. Words by kind permission. Disco 45. Armchair revolutionaries never go to war. 3-day weeks in Edward Heat ain't worth fighting for. The devil danced with Cozy Powell. The devil raced with Gunn. Who put the boot in Swansea City? Seasons in the sun. This time tomorrow's out of fashion. Everybody's future's in the breeze. I wanna live like all our yesterdays. In the 1970s. This time tomorrow's out of fashion. 'Cause everybody's future's in the breeze. Why can't it be just like our yesterdays? Back in the 1970s.
From 1996, the men they couldn't hang, Dennis Law and Ali McGraw, R.I.P. the lawman, Dennis Law. And lyrics in that song, Zach, I want to live like all our yesterdays in the 1970s. Because Caitlin thinks I'm stuck in the 70s. I've been watching some 70s TV shows. More of that in the next show, because a song I'm going to play, the video for it, features the guy in the comedy show I've just been watching that I bought a DVD box set for, but that will be in the next time out. But I am a bit obsessed still with the 1970s. You look back, you forget the blackouts, the strikes, the unemployment, the football riots and violence. And you just think of the happy times like Aztec bars and rally choppers.
Oh my.
I was a kid then, so it was different. I think if you're an adult in the 70s. But the UK, I don't know if it's not like this here. I don't think in Canada, I don't think Canadians look back. Some do, but I don't think as many look back to former eras. And there's so many TV shows on UK channels where it's like they look back at the 1970s or the 1980s, and I'm lapping all these shows up. I just watched a show this past week all about sweets and candy in the UK in the 1970s and 1980s. Caitlin thinks I have a problem, but lift the mood for us, Zach. Any final thoughts from you?
I do have a good final thought. If you want to find me on social media, I guess it's still X for the moment, at Zachary AM. No, my shout out for the end of the show, and I know you will share these sentiments as well, Michael. I am so happy this week across my social media feeds came the story of the signing of, I want to say, 17-year-old Jamie Forrest, his first pro contract at Dundee United. And so just so happy for Jamie, so happy obviously for Gordon and Claire and his grandparents, his grandma Wilma, who still sends me messages from time to time. And yeah, just so happy for him. Yeah, he was one of the kids in the post-game skirmishes on the pitch at BC Place that like you're like, oh yeah, this kid's like there's something to him. And then his dad would always post videos of his training sessions in their backyard and just the things he was doing at a young age. You're like, oh, this is impressive. But part of you like, yeah, it's maybe just in the backyard. And then as he got older, his dad would post game clips or whatever, and you're like, oh yeah, the dude's for real. So just so happy for him. Obviously, he played for Scotland youth levels as well, and a family that's so passionate about the game. And obviously, we know Gordon well, and I think both of us have an incredibly massive amount of respect for him and appreciation for him. And obviously, he's off with the City Football Group in China right now. But no, just so excited for Jamie, so excited for their family. And two of his teammates from back in those days on Swangard are also making their way through the football ranks in Milo Robinson is made youth level appearances for Wales. And
has he?
Yeah, well, that's what it looks like from social media. And then a lot younger, but little Kasek Waston is becoming quite the young player as well at only 10 years old or whatever. So he's got a ways to go, but just so happy for Jamie.
Yeah, it's great to see. I mean, starting off at Dundee United where Ryan Gauld started, maybe we'll have him here as a designated player at some point down the line. I take his dad back here as well as an assistant.
Oh, yeah.
I've known Gordon for years, obviously played for East Fife, was a coach at East Fife, came to the Whitecaps and the academy and then into the first team. And the last time I spoke to him, he was like, oh, whenever you're over next, let me know. Get your hospitality at Hearts. You can come out drinking with the guys after the game. Then he's got sacked there, so might have to go to China. But I think his time in China might be done. I think
he's just gone back.
Oh, has he? Because I saw him say bye-bye, so now he's gone back again.
Yeah, he was there before Christmas-ish or whatever, and I just saw that he was flying back.
Yeah, because it was the end of the season. Oh, so he must be back. Yeah. Oh, cool. Good luck to him.
Yeah, I don't know all the details of what he's doing there. I assume it's just like assistant coaching, whatever. But
yeah, he was there as assistant, so I'm assuming it might be the same again. But yeah, I mean, East Fife got another win in their long journey to Stranraer. Alan Troughton took his tally up for 22 this season. And the great thing about having a 20-goal goal scorer that no other team is going to come in for is you've got him to the end of the year. And the reason no other team's going to come in for him is he's 39. And he's having his best season, 20 goals.
Nice.
I'm not sure what that says about Scottish League 2, but I'd take him here at the Whitecaps the way that he's going as well. Never misses a penalty.
There you go. So Dick's getting the best out of him.
Yeah, and Dick we trust, as always. But yeah, that is it for another show. Hope you've enjoyed it. Let us know if you get out to any hot chocolate festival things, and always love to hear your thoughts on it, your spreadsheets on it, see your photos on it. We'll see what the week brings in Whitecaps land as well. There'll be a game, at least, maybe a couple of games the time we do the next show, maybe a signing or two to talk about as well. We'll be back chatting a lot more. Until then, have a good week. Thanks for listening. Take care. And as always, Mon the Caps.
Going to your first match is an experience you never forget. The atmosphere of what's going on around the pitch looks beautiful, and you always look and go, wow, I'd love to play here one day. If you get the bug, it's going to stay with you for life.
AFTN